What started as a relaxing voyage has turned into a prison term for thousands of holidaymakers.
We are confined to our cabin, and it's getting harder. We're now into the second week, and it seems an eternity.
The Diamond Princess has been under quarantine in Japan for a week.
We have the latest results, and another 39 passengers have tested positive for the coronavirus. So we would like to transport them to medical facilities immediately.
That brings the number of infections to at least 175, including a masked health worker who had addressed passengers. Dozens of cases have also been confirmed onshore in Yokohama. Together, they make up the biggest concentration of coronavirus patients outside China. The number of new infections reported on the mainland on Wednesday, however, is the lowest since January. Some medical officials have concluded the outbreak is reaching its peak and could be over by April.
That time course may well be true if the virus is allowed to run free. And really in Wuhan, I think it's fair to say that's what we're seeing. In Singapore, we're at the beginning of the outbreak. So in that sense, the epidemic curve would start again.
Around 300 employees have been evacuated from Singapore's biggest bank, DBS, when one person fell ill, prompting management to send staff home. In China, healthcare officials have started taking over private hospitals, apartments, and even hotels as part of emergency measures. Wuhan residents are reporting that some patients with life-threatening diseases are losing their hospital beds to people with coronavirus. And the World Health Organization has warned the epidemic should not be underestimated.
A virus can have more powerful consequences than any terrorist action. And that's true. And if the world doesn't want to wake up and consider this enemy virus as public enemy number one, I don't think we will learn from our lessons.
COVID-19 has not only brought the world's second-largest economy to a halt, it's also spreading fears of a global humanitarian disaster. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Andy Mok, a senior research fellow from the Center for China and Globalization based in Beijing. Welcome to Money Talks, Andy. Now, we're hearing day by day the various effects of the coronavirus, particularly the impact on businesses. Your center is based in China. Can you just describe for us how the outbreak is being felt in the capital there right now in terms of business and commerce?
Sure. So right now we're in the middle of a transition where initially the focus was on controlling the epidemic because no one was really sure just how bad it would become. Now, as you're saying, the emphasis is on how to make sure that the economic impact is minimized. So one way that we're seeing what's happening in Beijing is that it's been very, very quiet because it happened a lot over the one-week Spring Festival holiday. People are coming back to work, the economy is starting to rev up again. So hopefully the worst is behind us, and the question mark is, where do we go from here from an economic perspective?
Yeah, as you say, workers are starting to return to their offices and factories after that extended Lunar New Year break that was aimed at, I guess, containing the outbreak. Do you feel that perhaps business confidence has taken a hit in China because of this?
I think there's a lot of concern, mostly overseas, because the reference point that's being used is the SARS epidemic. And that, of course, had a major impact on China's economy. But I think the feeling amongst the central government, business leaders in China, is much less pessimistic. The reason is that, first of all, China's economy has evolved quite a bit in the last 10 years or so, so it's much more resilient. The government, as we can see from the response to the coronavirus, has also been much, much better than SARS. So that's one reason I think people are more confident. The other is that demand, I think, has really been delayed versus destroyed. So we're looking for a bounce back in Q2, maybe Q3. And I think the last point to mention for our audience is that the economic growth in China is much more of a managed statistic, a lot like corporate earnings for well-run corporations. So the government has a lot more latitude and considers hitting an economic growth target as much more important than, say, in places like the United States or other countries where it's seen more as, let's let the economy do what it does and then we'll see what happens. Whereas in China, it's very much managed.
Now, in the immediate aftermath of the outbreak, we saw the Beijing central bank inject a whole lot of capital, over $100 billion, I guess, to reassure markets that they were in control of what was happening. Can you give us an idea of what faith people are putting in the authorities in terms of their response to this outbreak?
I think there's tremendous confidence in the Chinese government's ability to manage the economic fallout from this epidemic. One, of course, is monetary policy, as we're seeing with the central bank. The other is from a fiscal perspective as well. So the government has been relatively restrained, again, because it's balancing deleveraging the economy, shifting the economy to a more sustainable path of long-term growth, but at the same time, responding to exogenous shocks like this. Whether we're talking about the U.S.-China trade conflict, this outbreak, other types of one-off events also need to be managed. So I think on the one hand, government is responding carefully, but also looking at managing this.
Hopefully, as the outbreak gets further contained, that it's no longer considered an epidemic. After all that, we'll see the figures trickle in terms of what impact it's had on China's GDP growth for the quarter. Do you expect that this epidemic has hit growth figures for this quarter?
I think it certainly has. I mean, if we look nothing else, the one-week Spring Festival holiday typically leads to a significant reduction in economic activity. And of course, everything from tourism to exports have also suffered. So I think first quarter, we definitely will see an impact.
Okay. Andy Mok, thank you so much for joining us in the studio here at Money Talks.
My pleasure.